Thank you, Melissa. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. I'm in Los Angeles, so it's still morning for me. I want to welcome all of our end users, OEMs, distributors, and dealers to today's Insight 12-volt webinar. And today we're going to take an in-depth look at our recently launched Insight 12-volt battery and why it's a game changer in the marketplace. I want to introduce myself. My name is Ty Woodruff. I'm a product manager here at RELiON. And prior to RELiON, I have 5 years experience in product management with an international lead-acid battery manufacturer. I'm joined today by Darren Massey. He's my partner in crime, helping answer questions in chat. Darren has 13 years as an electrical technician for an international boat builder and an additional 10 years in technical support in the inverter charger industry. And we've both been with RELiON for a little over 2 years now. So our webinar today is scheduled for 1 hour, and I hope that we can cover these first 3 topics here on RELiON batteries history and redefining our, how lithium is redefining the recreational vehicle experience and the benefits, features and benefits of Insight, and follow it up with about a 15-minute session, live session with Q&A. So we'll jump right into RELiON's organization history. And, RELiON's a global leader offering a range of high-quality battery products that continue to pave the way forward to a greener and more efficient future for energy storage. And it seems recently that the, battery space has become pretty crowded, with competitors. And I just want everybody to understand that, RELiON, we've been around a while. We were the first to put a lithium battery inside of a drop-in replacement BCI case size, and all of our batteries are engineered here in the USA. And we didn't just buy a product off of the shelf and slap our label on it. So I want to touch on, again, some of our company milestones, our history. And as I said, the market's become a little bit crowded, but we have a rich heritage in energy storage. RELiON was founded by Paul Hekimovich in 2014. And Paul just didn't decide to found a battery company back then. He had previous to that, he had spent 25 years in the lead-acid battery industry with Carolina Energy Distributors. So, like I say, we have a pretty rich heritage in energy storage. 2015, 2016, those years following, we had pretty rapid growth as we added international relations and sales, and especially engineering. And in 2017, our technology center was opened, and where we perform engineering and testing on all of our on all the products that we manufacture and sell. 2019, we saw the launch of our initial Insight product, which was a 48-volt battery, and we'll get into the different voltages available for Insight. That's a common question. But 2019, we launched our initial Insight battery, and was the birth of the product. And then 2020, we began giving back. We launched our environmental initiative and became members of 1% for the Planet, a creed that lives within the fabric of our organization, and it really relates closely to our mission statement to power the world's transition to lithium energy storage ethically. And what 1% for the Planet does is we donate 1% of our revenue annually to environmental causes. In 2021, we partnered with ASG and Brunswick. We are proud to be among industry-leading brands within Brunswick's Advanced Systems Group. If you're not familiar, Brunswick is the world's leader in recreational boats and marine engines, along with marine and RV parts and accessories. So I'm going to move into lithium batteries and how they're redefining the recreational vehicle experience. And today, RV users are demanding more from batteries, not only in the availability of power and efficiency, but a battery's ability to integrate with today's smart connected world. The RV industry is changing to meet demand, including lithium in their adopted low voltage ANSI standard and changing storage requirements. So previously, batteries were always stored because a lead acid battery vents hydrogen. The flooded lead acid battery vents hydrogen during charging. So storage had to be away from a living area and well vented. And lithium batteries don't have that challenge. So we're finding that the RV industry is moving those storage compartments inside. They're smaller and they're not requiring the vents, which is really paving the way for lithium to be more in RVs. And really, how are the batteries redefining, lithium batteries redefining the recreational vehicle experiences? Number one, they're lighter weight. You can get away with, they're about half the weight of a lead acid bank. So you can save 200 to 300 pounds in fuel, fuel that you can put in your vehicle, or water, or any other payload that could be in the vehicle. They're highly efficient. They can charge in about half the time or less of a lead acid battery bank, so 5 hours compared to 10 or more. They're, of course, maintenance free. You don't have any acid or corrosion to clean up that's spilled from charging. And our lithium batteries are also extremely safe. Our Insight is rated to UL 1973. We have pending right now. And they're among the safest chemistries for lithium. But if you're familiar with lithium batteries, you're probably thinking, Chai, you missed the most important points on why lithium is redefining the recreational vehicle experience. And compared to lead acid, lithium batteries have more usable capacity. They are partially state of charge tolerant. They are temperature tolerant and have a much longer life. And I save these for a second because I want to look at them in more detail. More usable capacity. So when we compare lead acid to lithium, our amp hours aren't always equal. And that's demonstrated by our usable capacity of lithium iron phosphate compared to lead acid. So looking at the capacity of a RELiON lithium iron phosphate battery versus lead acid at various rates of discharge, I want to display this chart that we're comparing a 100 amp hour lithium iron phosphate RELiON battery to a 100 amp hour nominal 100 amp hour flooded lead acid battery and a 100 amp hour AGM lead acid battery. And I say 100 amp hours nominal because the flooded lead acid battery is actually rated at 115 amp hours and the AGM is rated at 130 amp hours. And that's because the rate at which the capacity diminishes as the discharge rate increases. So on our x-axis here, we have capacity in amp hours, and our y-axis, we have the rate of discharge. So let's put a line here at 40 amps, and you can see that the lead acid, both flooded and AGM, maintain about 68 amp hours at a 40 amp rate, and our RELiON lithium iron phosphate battery is 100 amp hours, regardless of how quickly you take that energy out. So whether you discharge at 1 amp or 70 amps, you still have 100 amp hours, which isn't true with our lead acid battery, where you have only 68 amp hours at that 40 amp hour rate, and it declines as you go further. So to prevent irreparable damage, lead acid batteries shouldn't be discharged below 50% of their capacity. So that's where that 68 amp hours, if you're discharging at a high rate, 50%, you reach your capacity, you reach your limit a lot sooner. Moving on, also power during constant current discharge. Lithium has little to no voltage sag. And looking back at that 50% rule with lead acid, the farther you discharge beyond 50%, the lower the voltage goes under load. So, most DC appliances like about 10.5 volts to function. So looking at this chart, we have our discharge voltage characteristics at various rates. And on our x-axis here, we have capacity, and our y-axis, we have voltage. And I want to put a line here right at the 90% part. And, based on our C rating, if you're not familiar with C rating, C is the capacity of your battery. And if you have a 100 amp hour battery, 1C would mean that you're discharging at 100 amps. So that blue line represents that 100 amp discharge rate. So we have, 90% out to 90, right about 90% capacity. You maintain just about 12 volts with a lithium, with our lithium iron phosphate batteries. Next, our lithium batteries don't suffer from partial state of charge They're, I like to think of them as partial state of charge indifferent. And, partial charging is the leading cause of lead-acid battery failure. And it's not an immediate effect. It's a cumulative effect that, let's say that I didn't charge my batteries because, I'm connected to solar panels and I didn't get enough sun that day. And they were that lead-acid bank was left in less than a full state of charge. It's cumulative, and it all adds up in, every time they're left that way for an extended period, that the battery deteriorates a little bit more and ultimately leads to the early failure of that lead acid battery. So like I say, lithium is really indifferent, and in changing that experience with lithium batteries for the RV is that it's less time being concerned with your power needs. You don't have to worry about leaving your battery partially charged. Oh, you don't have to go turn my generator on to make sure that my batteries get back up to full to maintain, make sure that they're not damaged. Next up, we have cold temperature performance, and I want to clear up some common misconceptions about lithium, and I think it's just a general education in the marketplace that, oh, well, lithium doesn't do well in the cold, and I've heard that from multiple sources. But all batteries, regardless of chemistry, suffer a reduction in performance in colder temperatures. And let's take a look at that in this slide here, where we compare capacity versus temperature in lithium and lead acid batteries. So along our x-axis here, we have temperature, and our y-axis, we have capacity percentage. I want to just draw a line here right at 32 degrees. And our green line here you can see is lithium. And even in 32 degrees and at that freezing point, lithium maintains 90% of its capacity. Lead acid, AGM lead acid maintains 73%, and flooded 65%. Next, I want to talk about longer life. Lithium has a much longer lifespan compared to lead acid batteries, up to 10 times longer. And we rate our batteries at 3,500 cycles at 80% depth of discharge. 80% depth of discharge. That's almost, if you do the math on that, 3,500 cycles. If you were to cycle that battery once a day, that's 10 years. So we're reaching a point where we're hoping that the battery lasts closer to the life of the vehicle, or closer to the life of your RV, whether it's a trailer or a motorized unit, that 10-year or greater time that you have it, unlike lead acid that you would have to replace every 2 to 3 years. So, kind of in summary, lithium batteries are redefining the RV experience through superior performance and peace of mind, allowing RVers to worry less about power availability or battery maintenance. So next we'll move into insight, features, and benefits. And although most of you have tuned in for the 12-volt battery specifically, I want to mention that the Insight is also available in 24 and 48-volt configurations. And this is a question we get pretty often. Can I put my 12-volt Insight battery in series to make 48 volts for, to run my golf cart? And this is kind of where how our Insight battery was conceived. And a couple of our engineers were sitting in the lab reviewing testing results and noticed that our customers were placing our 12-volt drop-in replacement Group 31 batteries in series for 48 volts in golf carts. And they noticed that they were out of balance and had failed prematurely because of improperly being charged. And that's the challenge with series charging, is that you have to use a multi-bank charger to make sure that the batteries are always brought back up, maintain balance, which that's how our Insight battery was conceived. Let's make a 12, 24, 36, 48 volt battery that can be placed in parallel. And then you don't have those concerns where you need to use a multi-bank charger and everything gets evenly charged. And I also want to say, even though our webinar today is focused on RV, Insight can be used in just about any application that requires a 12, 24, or 48 volt battery. And I like to use the comparison of when you look at a AA battery, that it can go in your TV remote, it can go in your flashlight, it can go in. I've got one in my doorbell, my smart doorbell that sits outside that runs that. So any application that requires a 12, 24, 48 volt battery, you can pick what capacity you pick your voltage and then pick the capacity that you need, whether that be according to the capacity of each 12, 24, 48 volt battery, 120 amp hours, 240 amp hours. Just pick the number of Insight batteries you need. So I want to move next into the external features of the Insight battery, and the Insight battery is a GC2 case size. If you're not familiar with cases, we'll get into that in a little bit here. And it is IP67 water resistant, which means that you can the battery will withstand up to 30 minutes in 3 feet of water. Which we never suggest that you submerge your battery, but it is it's a nice insurance policy to have to protect your battery in case it does get wet. So starting up here in the upper left of our battery, the Insight does have dual terminals. It makes it simple for multiple connections. And if you do need multiple lugs, that you don't have to stack them on top of one terminal. We do offer two. The Insight battery does have communication, and we'll get into that a little bit. And it does have an in and an out CAN bus port. It also features a multifunction button and LED display. This multifunction button is used to power the battery on and off, and it is used to interact with the BMS and the lights. You can reset the BMS. You can display different, display what state of charge the battery is in, and it will also tell you if it's awake or in sleep mode. Insight battery also features an external heat sink. We'll get into the construction of the battery here in a little bit. And along with our IP67 water resistance, we do have a vent here that equalizes pressure. When temperatures change, the pressure inside the battery does also, but our vent here allows air, but not dust or water, to equalize within the battery and keep it safe and prevent the case from cracking. Finally, we have a lift strap bracket here, for easy install of your battery. So moving on, Insight is equipped with CAN bus communication, and it's a communication standard that allows microcontrollers and devices to communicate with each other. And it's the language really that the BMS uses to communicate within external devices like our fuel gauge, and or for our OEM attendees today, multiplex displays. It is our CAN bus is bridgeable through RVC to communicate with those displays. Moving into the construction of Insight, this is really the reasons for our performance and game-changing rates is that the battery, we have a really robust BMS, and we use prismatic cells and an external heat sink, which that's really what allows when we get into the rates here, to see why we're able to achieve what we do. And we do have a gasketed screw-fastened lid that helps us meet our third-party certified IP67 seal. I want to move towards low-temperature technology and how lithium batteries should be charged in the cold. We, earlier when we looked at cold temperature performance, we were talking about discharge, but a normal lithium battery in the cold, you can only charge, if it's not heated. You can only charge, in 14 to 32 degrees Fahrenheit. You can charge at less than or equal to 0.1 C, which remember, C, we defined as capacity. And if we have a 120 amp hour Insight battery, 0.1 C or 10% of that is 12 amps. So without our heating technology, you'd only be able to charge at about a 12 amp rate. Drop that temperature even further, and you can only charge at half of that. So that's extremely slow charge time. So this is why we developed our low temperature heating, functionality in our, both legacy and Insight batteries. And I just want to clear up, it only functions when the battery detects a charge current and it's below 32 degrees. And the way that works is that the battery is equipped with an internal heating mechanism that, charges, that charge current is diverted to heating until the battery reaches a safe internal charging temperature. If you're like me, I have a 20-foot travel trailer, and I'm definitely a fair weather camper. If you don't need that internal heating element, or you have an industrial application or a marine application where you really don't feel that that's going to be necessary, we do have the non-LT version coming in September 2022, later this year. So continuing on in our overview, I want to touch on case sizes. If you're new to batteries or you aren't familiar with RV and marine case sizes, I want to show how the GC2 compares to those other sizes that are most commonly found out there. And we really feel that the Insight can fit in almost all applications. And my travel trailer has a hitch box on the front, so it's really important to note that it's a hitch-mounted battery on the front. So it's important to note that in applications like that, you probably have to install a little bit taller box. But so you can see it's a little bit taller, but not the rest of the profile of the battery is really close to a Group 24. And these being the most 24, 27, and 31, and 8D being the most common sizes found in RV applications. So here in this, you can get kind of a different perspective view of how they stack up against each other. And and most of these, especially in the case of an 8D, you could fit multiple Insight batteries into that space for much better performance. And as you see here, really the only dimension that varies that much is in the height. So now we get to the real fun part here, where our Insight battery has really game-changing rates, and that's really in our continuous discharge current, and which is 160 amps. And there's other batteries that are obviously much larger, or multiple batteries that you would need to accomplish this. Otherwise they're not in the nice small form factor of the Insight battery. We also list multiple peak discharge currents, and I think this is important. With some of the appliances that you might run, it's not just 160 amps continuous or 400 amps for 5 seconds. We like to give everyone an idea of the ranges in here and where our software is programmed to turn the battery off if they exceed those rates. The battery does have a low voltage disconnect, and it does have short circuit protection. And if any of these are tripped, when the condition is removed, the battery automatically recovers. You don't have to do anything special to get it to come back to life. But let's look at what those game-changing discharge rates really mean in terms of use. And this is our 12-volt 120 continuous for the full discharge of 120 amp hours. The Insight battery can discharge at 160 amps, which, if you look here, what does that mean in watts? Amps times voltage, equals watts. So 160 times 12.8 equals 2,048 watts. So that's important, because if you compare to competing Group 31 and GC2 models, one battery, 12.8 volts at 100 amps, only equals 1,280 watts. So in a similar form factor, you would need 2 batteries or more to perform what one Insight battery does. And that's really important, because you can run one or multiple hair dryers, 800 to 1,000 watt hair dryer, 800 to 1,000, 1,200 watt microwave, or just the AC power supply being coming from an inverter, and that's all capable from one Insight battery. I also want to note that our currents are 75% additive and parallel, so you can't just stack batteries on top of each other. It's not 320 amps. I think it's significant to educate the marketplace, and that batteries don't always discharge evenly, and we like to leave that 25% cushion in there to make sure that your system functions and that you don't suffer a loss of power. Charging, we recommend that the Insight battery is charged between 10 and 60 amps, and it is capable of accepting up to 100 amp maximum charging current. Charging disconnect will shut off at 120 amps if seen for more than half a second. And we recommend, like all of our lithium batteries, to charge between 14.4 and 14.6 volts, floating at 13.8, and it will disconnect when the entire battery pack reaches 14.8 volts or any individual cell reaches 3.7 volts. And then, of course, when that condition is removed, the battery pack will automatically recover. So I'm going to dive now into one of our most common questions, and one that was asked multiple times and that you guys submitted when you signed up for the webinar. And as when you convert your RV to lithium, is what are the essential components and considerations that you need to have? So first off, we start with our Insight battery, and we begin with the battery monitor. And remember, earlier in the presentation, I talked about how the voltage characteristics of lithium are much higher. So in my coach, when I put lithium in it, and I hadn't changed out my monitor yet, that gauge, because lithium runs at well above 13 volts most of the time, through most of its charge cycle, or down to 12 volts out to 90% depth of discharge. You're probably never going to see that in your lead acid battery monitor. So you do need to change to one of our fuel gauges, to see an accurate state of charge. And also, of course, for our OEMs, this is as I said before, the Insight battery is compatible with multiplex displays through RVC. So the next item that you are going to want to change is your inverter and charger. I have our Master Volt Combi Master here shown, and this is one unit that acts as an inverter and charger, but a lot of times those are separated. And for your charger, you want to make sure that we always recommend a lithium profile, and you want it set between 14.4 and 14.6 volts as our charging spec said. And then your inverter, you're going to want to adjust the low voltage cutout to 12 volts. Next item up is our solar charge controller. You're going to want to also set that to 14.4 to 14.6 volts. Following on, if you do have a motorized unit that employs an alternator, we always recommend that you don't connect that starting battery directly to your house power. We always recommend that you have a DC to DC charger or a ChargeMate Pro smart relay, 40 or 90 amp in between. And what this does is that that DC to DC charger or ChargeMate Pro protects your battery from a possible voltage spike from an alternator. And conversely, it protects your alternator should, for whatever reason, if the battery shuts down, it protects your alternator from all of a sudden not having a place for the current to go. And then, additionally, automotive alternators put out 13.4 volts, and a DC to DC charger or a relay boosts that voltage up to that 14.4 to 14.6 that the Insight needs to charge. One final point, a lot of newer Class B, van style RVs, are equipped with 1,000 to 800 to 1,200, 1,500 watt rooftop air conditioners, which they do have a lot of those have a separate alternator that's used just to charge the house bank. The Insight is compatible with those, and for a short period, depending on how many Insight batteries you have, it is possible to run that air conditioning. I want to move into plug and play accessories with the Insight battery and their setup and function. And with most batteries, when you install them, whether it be lead acid or lithium, to monitor their state of charge, you need to install a shunt, which records the usage of the battery. And with Insight because we have that CAN bus communication that's put out, to our gauge, you don't need that shunt, and we actually recommend that you don't use a shunt because it doesn't the internal discharge of the BMS isn't picked up, by a shunt. So we recommend that you always use one of our fuel gauges. But our fuel gauge is a very simple plug-and-play setup. It has, it's very simple: one CAN bus plug and 2 ring terminals, and you mount the gauge, and you're off and running with no programming. And then, as you saw earlier, our Insight battery does have a on-off and that multifunction button. And if you do have your batteries mounted in a remote location in your RV, you can mount that button where it's easier access to turn the batteries on and off. So I just want to show really quickly here. I have a video. This is in a golf cart, but the installation is pretty much the same in an RV on how simple it is to set up our fuel gauge. You only start by powering down the batteries before installation, and plug in the CAN bus cable to the CAN port. Then you attach your red ring terminal to the positive battery post and your black ring terminal to the negative battery post. Keep setting this up because this is kind of tradition in golf that you put the positive on the positive side and the negative on the other battery, but it'll work either way, whether you put them on one battery or 2. Fuel gauge is mounted to the dashboard, simply snapped in, and you plug in the cable to the back of the gauge. And your installation is complete. It'll show you how many batteries you have, and then it'll show you your state of charge. Obviously, this is a 48 amp hour tank, so you do only show 40 amp hours at 67%, but it's a really simple installation process. Moving on into those accessories, we make the selection of the accessories very easy. We start with look at our list here and see that we have a 12-volt fuel gauge, or you pick your fuel gauge, whether it's 12-volt or 24 or 48-volt, and then you select which length wire harness you need. For a lot of golf applications, we have the shorter 3-meter cables, but in RV and marine applications, the 6 or 10-meter cable may be much more appropriate, depending on where you want to mount that gauge, if you want to put it up on the dashboard or elsewhere within the vehicle. Next, as I touched on, we do have a remote button, and those come in multiple lengths as well. And we do have a combo coming soon in the next couple of weeks that includes your fuel gauge and button all in one, so you only have to mount one set of ring terminals there or set up one set of ring terminals there to your battery. And then if you are running both a gauge and button, we do have a splitter to make sure that you have enough ports to plug that CAN bus cable into. I want to say the Insight battery does ship with 2-foot cables standard, so you don't have to buy any cables when you purchase multiple Insight batteries right out of the box. But we do offer 1, 2, and 4-foot cables in straight and 90-degree connections. So if you do need them, depending on how you orient the battery and how it's mounted, it can be at 90 degrees or straight if it's on its side and you need those. For our dealers, distributors, and OEMs, if you are installing multiple batteries in in large quantities and you need to troubleshoot, someone's that they're having a problem with their battery bank, we do offer an Insight portable battery analyzer, and this product you plug it into the CAN port. It reads all the batteries that are available, and you can get into really fine detail, what's the voltage per cell, you can focus in on certain batteries, and you know, if it's a nice diagnostic tool to have, you know, if something should go wrong. And then finally, if you are trying to fill the space in a compartment, we do offer a battery spacer. It's just an empty case that can take the place of, you know, fill the space in your compartment. And we're right at about 40 minutes now, so that concludes our presentation portion of today's webinar. And I can open it up now to questions and answers from the audience, and Darren and I can answer.
Yes, I was curious. You mentioned inverter charger. Now I have a converter, a WFCO converter. Is inverter used interchangeably with converter, or is it a different animal altogether?
I am familiar, I think, Doug, with what you're saying here. My trailer has a converter, and it's that same WFCO converter. They're kind of the same thing. Darren, can you shed a little light on that?
Yeah, so an inverter charger is going to take DC and convert to AC. That's the inverter function. And charger function is AC to DC. The converter just doesn't have that inverter function, so it's just going to be a charger. So kind of interchangeable as far as terminology.
Right. The one thing that I noticed with mine, and you know, before I changed it out, that WFCO, it only, like we said, lead acid, it only charges at 13.4 volts, and that's important because, you know, lithium likes 14.4 to 14.6, and I did notice that my batteries only got to about 70% full charging on that lower voltage, so it is recommended that you probably change that out to. I know they do have a replacement model that is intended for lithium, or if you go with, you know, I believe we have plenty of master volt products that could take the place of that. Do you sell a 48 volt charger, inverter, or just charger? That question just came through. I'll have to look. We'll have to get back to you on that, Brad. I don't believe we sell a 48 volt inverter charger. I believe right now we only have a 48 volt charger, but we'll have to look into that.
There are a lot of companies out there that do have 48 volt charger and inverters, though, that are definitely compatible.
Yeah. If there are no more questions in the chat, I want to go to the list of questions that we received prior to our webinar, and let's go through those. And oh, here we go. Let's see.
So Tim, yes, we have 12, 24, and 48 volt Insight batteries, which definitely could be used. And I'm not sure what you mean by electrical vehicles, but floor cleaners, golf carts, up to that 48 volt limit.
Yeah, I think we see 48 volt as the most appropriate, or most commonly used. 48 and 24 volt most commonly used in electric vehicles. And of course, as we said, our 48 volt Insight battery is 30 amp hours. And just like just like I'd mentioned earlier in the webinar, you know, you pick your voltage and then you pick the capacity that you need. So, you know, in electric vehicle applications, we see that that 48 volt battery in most carts, you know, it varies based on driver, but that 48 volt application, we recommend that you use 2 batteries, and you know, each battery you get 12 to 17 miles in range, depending on, of course, how you drive and whether or not it's a hilly application, you know, terrain profile. So, you know, 2 batteries get you 24 to 34 miles, so on and so forth.
So Doug, the LT means low temperature. So the Insight battery is a low temperature battery at this time, the 12 volt. We will have the Insight battery without the LT designation, which is non-low temperature, which the LT just means it has a built-in heater.
Did you see this question here, Darren? We have a 3000 Combi Master. Our 100 amp batteries are being switched out to 220 amp Insight batteries. Our technician said the 3000 inverter needs at least 400 amps. Is this true? Can you speak to that, Darren?
Yeah, so the inverter is going to need a certain amount of power to be able to start up and operate. It's more dependent on your loads as to how many amps you truly need as far as amp hours of battery. The Combi Master 3000, we've got them running out there in coaches right now with 200 amp hours, no issues. It's really dependent on your load that you're going to be running. Hope that answers that.
Next question from Wolfgang. What about cell balancing? Is it active or passive? How does it work? Will it work in partial state of charge? So yeah, our battery, like I said earlier, if you weren't on for that part of the webinar, our lithium batteries are indifferent to partial charging. Unlike a lead acid battery, they are not damaged. Lithium is not damaged at all by being left partially charged if you don't get enough sun from your solar panel that day. And cell balancing, active or passive, there's nothing in our, software that I don't think anyway that makes actively causes one battery to charge another. I think that as they're connected in parallel, they just naturally, once the load is removed, they just naturally all find balance. Is that accurate, Darren?
Yes. So Tim, unfortunately, we don't have automotive 140 volt, 4 volt system. And already answered in the chat, but Mike, the 34 volt or 36 volt golf cart, we are developing an Insight battery at 36 volts. Don't have that yet.
Yep. Yeah, we have 3 AGM in 2019 Winnebago Revel. If we replace with lithium, do we need to wire the monitor to all 3? Or did I hear you say that you can wire? Yes, you can wire it to just one. So the Insight batteries are all connected. As I said, you do receive a 2-foot CAN bus cable with each battery. So when you install them, you put those 3 batteries into your Revel, and you connect them by CAN bus, and then you connect the Insight fuel gauge to the in port on the first battery in your bank. And the CAN bus takes care of the rest. It counts how many batteries you have. It tells you, okay, 3 batteries are connected, and then it tells you your capacity remaining, and as a percentage. I don't think that the rear battery is at a greater distance. I mean, unless you're really far away, I don't think that the rear battery, in the same compartment, being even if it's a couple feet, is going to make a difference.
So Fort Bend Boats, the 36 volt battery, again, is coming out. Until that time, we have our Legacy series lithium batteries that have multiple different amp hour sizes that will work in series with that. The Insight cannot be series stacked, just to put that out there.
Right.
So you have to choose 12, 24, or 48 volt at this time.
LT comes with a heater. How low of a temperature can they go? I think we have the Insight battery rated to -30 for discharge, and really it just depends on how how long that heater is going to take to charge, to warm the battery to a safe charging temperature. Follow-up to inverter question: what if the load includes air conditioning? Is 240 amps in batteries enough? I think that it all depends. It's just an equation of how long yoking that you want to run based on the wattage of your AC and how much capacity you have. But as we said, the Insight battery is a 2000, can put out 2000 watts continuous, for its whole, discharge. One battery can put out that 2000 watts continuous for its full discharge. Two could do, could obviously do more, but at that point, it's just a matter of how long you want to run off of battery power.
So kind of along the same question, Ted, you have a 675 amp hour lead acid bank. As Chai mentioned earlier, 50% of that is usable in a flooded lead acid bank, so about 335 amp hours. So if you want about the same capacity, lithium, you would want to go with about 400 amp hours to get about the same. If you're looking for more or less runtime, then you could adjust the bank as needed.
And two 12-volt start a 2.5 kilowatt Onan generator. We have not tested Insight for starting, so I cannot confirm if you could do that. But if you do need a higher peak battery, we do have batteries that can supply up to 800 amps for a few seconds to start, even pretty large boat motors. So we do have a solution for that.
And if you can get the current requirement of that generator, you can definitely compare it to our surge ratings on the Insight battery. Just my personal opinion, that should be a pretty small starter on that. And we have for 15 seconds 350 amps, so with 2 batteries, that would give you 700 amps, which should start just about anything.
Do you know of any company that currently makes automotive 12-volt lithium batteries that connects to? Yeah, Tim, sorry. I'm not aware of anybody that does that for automotive, unfortunately. Revel batteries, one on passenger side, one driver's side by doors, and one by the back axle, not in the same compartment. Someone told us the cables need to be the same lengths. Wondering about what lithium needs regarding the lengths of cables.
So when designing a battery bank, and even more important with lithium, is the resistance between the batteries need to be equal. It has to do with the balancing of the batteries. So same length, same size cables is very important in any battery bank, but even more so with lithium. If you get any voltage drop between batteries, they're not going to use from the batteries equally, and they're not going to charge equally. So yeah, that is a very important part of designing your battery bank. So Tim, connecting lithium batteries in series, the change between flooded lead acid and the lithium batteries is that the lithium batteries have electronics in them to protect them, and they turn the battery on and off as needed to protect. And when you've got a high voltage battery bank with 12 or 24 volt battery series together, and that BMS opens up, you can get high voltage to the other batteries through diodes and such that can end up being damaged. So you have to be very careful and make sure the batteries are designed to be able to be seriesed.
Yeah. I also want to address, is there a post-seminar contact email for Darren? With any of your technical questions, please feel free to reach out to our our website to go to our question area there, and please note it, and it'll of course be routed to the proper technical support, Darren or someone else in the department.
There is a question above from Karen. She asked about a 72-volt battery, if there is any talks about development.
No, not at this time. So we're right at 11 o'clock, and I want to thank everybody for joining us. Like I said, if you do have additional questions or curious about any of our other products, please feel free to reach out on our website contact us form. Thanks for joining today.
Michael, we are looking at some different sizes, maybe not those exact ones, but stay in touch, see what we can do there. Has one more question here. So simply replacing your AGM batteries. You always want to look at the rest of the system. So depending on what you already have, it could be a simple drop-in, or you could need to add or replace different components to make the best system possible. If you want to have a discussion over what you currently have, we can definitely look at that and see what may or may not need to be replaced in your system. DC to DC charger may not be necessary unless if you're wanting a complete charge from the alternator or have voltage drop issues. So we can definitely look at that. Charles, 72 volt can be achieved with RB100s. The issue is charging. We do recommend those batteries be charged separately. So discharging is fine at 72 volts. We just need to find a charging solution that works for the individual customer.
Michael, just really quick, insights can be installed on their side. They can be installed on their long side or on their short side. And if you do install them on the short side, you just got to make sure that the positive terminal is up. So yes, they can be installed in just about any configuration except upside down. Alrighty, we are 2 minutes past the hour. Thank you everyone for joining today, and I'll go ahead and conclude our call now.